Danny Lightning back, and this is part of my EQ for voiceover playlist. So this is a class on how to EQ your voiceover to make it sound as good as possible. And in this part, we're going to show you how to EQ out the mud or the boxy sounds that make your voice a little bit harder to understand. I mainly focus on the muddy sounds, but it's basically the same thing for removing boxy sounds. So this video will give you a really good idea on how to get rid of those sounds, and let's get to the video. Today we're going to show you how to get rid of those muddy frequencies, and we're going to show you on this type of EQ right here, which is more like an old school analog EQ. And I'm going to show you on this type of EQ as well. So the first thing we want to do is add a high pass filter, which allows the high frequencies to pass and it cuts off the bass frequencies. The high pass filter is going to remove any bass frequencies that are deeper than the human voice, like room rumbles or hums or even low resonating frequencies from your voice. And we're just going to go ahead and set it and leave it and come back to that later, but we'll talk about that in a second. To start off, I'm going to set my high pass filter at 50 Hertz. Somewhere between 300 and 600 Hertz are normally where the muddiest frequencies are. So I'm going to make a little band here and make a little nice bell curve. I'm going to drop it down by 2 to 3 decibels, and I'm going to set that at 500 Hertz. Once you have that set at 500, you're going to move it a little bit to the right, move it a little bit to the left, and just kind of keep doing that a little bit until you hear, hey, my voice is a little bit easier to understand. Or if you want, you can always boost it and try and hear what sounds a little more muddy when it's boosted. For me, right around 500 Hertz is usually the worst of the mid-range muddy frequencies, but then I still sometimes get some more muddy frequencies. So if you notice, a lot of people will tell you boost the bass at 100 Hertz by 6 decibels or 3 decibels, and that can actually make things even more muddy. Now, if you can boost the bass up just a little bit and it's not going to make you sound worse, by all means go for it. But once you get rid of the most of the mud here, if you notice, hey, I still got some muddy frequencies, what you're going to do is make a nice another little bell curve, and you're going to adjust the Q here until it's more, kind of flattish. And you're just going to drop that down by maybe 1 or 2 decibels, and that should get rid of most of the mud. So between this little cut here and this little cut here, most of the mud should be gone. And if it's not, that means you've got some weird resonating bass frequencies that are like lower than the human voice. And that's when we're going to take our high pass filter. We're going to come over to like 60 Hertz. We're going to say hello, 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 and see if we got rid of those frequencies. If not, we'll go over to 70. Hello, hello, hello. Did we get rid of the muddy frequencies? Now we come over to 80, then 90, then about 100. Personally, I would try never to go past 100 with the high pass filter. On an average person's voice, somewhere between 50 and 80 is where I like to set this high pass filter. But like I said, if there's a little bit of extra mud, you can use this to kind of cut some of it out. So that's really all there is to it. You basically make a cut around 500 Hertz, move it a little bit to the left and the right. If you need to, you can adjust the Q to make so the band's like, narrower or wider. So, you can kind of really hone in on that specific frequency once you find it. So that's really all there is to it, right? Pull this down around 500, move it to the left and right a little bit. If it still sounds muddy, make another little cut around like, 100, 150, something like that. And if it still sounds muddy, go ahead and start playing with your high pass filter. Bam, voila, we are done. Very simple, very easy for the most part, as long as you have a good ear and you can hear those bassy frequencies. So let's go ahead and turn this off. So this is what it sounds like without it. And you notice there's probably going to be more bassy, muddy frequencies coming back. And my voice probably isn't quite as easy to understand. So let's go ahead and switch over to another type of EQs. I'm just going to make this segment quick, but if you watch the last part when we use the other type of EQ, you're going to understand exactly what we're doing here and why. So let's get to it. All right, so this is the Brainworks BX console end channel strip. And the first thing we're going to do is figure out where the high pass filter is. So we take our high pass filter knob, we set it to around 50 or 60 Hertz to start off with. Now we're going to come over to the mid-range bass frequencies, and that's going to be these little EQs right here. So I'm going to find the Hertz setting, and I'm going to set that to around 500. So this is the Q. I usually go with about a 1.5 or so, 1.2, 1.3, something like that on the Q. And then I'm just going to go down by -2. Like let's do about -2. All right, so now I'm going to adjust the Q a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and move that up and down until I notice, hey, that sounds best. Right about there sounds pretty good to me. And then I can take the hertz setting and I can just kind of be like bloop, 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 bloop until I find what sounds like the clearest. It removes the most of those muddy bass frequencies, right? So there we go. We just dropped it down at 500 hertz. We adjusted minus 2 decibels, so that drops those frequencies down by 2 decibels. And we adjusted our Q. So next thing we're going to do is find our bass frequencies. We're going to set that to around, 110, 120, something like that. And then we're either going to boost that. I mean, if we want to boost it up, does that sound good or does that sound bad? Or if we notice we got just a little bit too much, we can go ahead and just kind of reduce this a little bit. This type of EQ is not as versatile, but it gives you a good idea of how that works. So let's go ahead and put that on like -1. Right about there should be, pretty darn good, 120 hertz or so. And bam, we just remove the mud on this type of EQ. And if there's still a little bit more, that's when we come back to the high pass filter. And we start moving the high pass filter until we cut off a little more of that low end bass to get rid of the resonating frequency. So, but bam, there it is. That's pretty much the deal right there. So at this point, our voice should sound really good and be a little bit easier to understand. And hey, all the muddy frequencies should be gone or almost gone. If you have to drop it down by more than 3 decibels, I think you have a major frequency problem in your room and you need to work on fixing that. If you have to really cut that by a lot, that's when you're going to start running into some major issues and you need to fix that, right? You need to fix that. I went with the acoustic foam and it did cut the reflections down by about 90%. It works really good. I can always use like a little plug-in to remove some reverb out of the room to where you can't even tell it's there if I need to. But bottom line is the foam was awesome, but it's not the best way to do it. So anyways, proper room treatment will help get rid of those bassy resonating frequencies that cause some mud. And, if you talk too close to the microphone, it's going to sound more muddy as well. So finding the sweet spot between close and further away, you don't want it to be too muddy. So anyways, thanks for watching. You guys are amazing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you drop down the video's description, you'll see some links to some really awesome audio, video gear, microphones, cameras, lighting, interfaces, you name it. We got some links to some Waves VST plugins down there and all kinds of good stuff. So drop down the video's description, check that out. There's some ways to help support the channels, my Discord server, my other YouTube channels, and all kinds of stuff in there. So check that out. And if you want to see more videos on my EQ for voiceover class, go ahead and go to my channel, scroll down, you'll find the playlist. And if I've recorded them, hey, they'll be in the playlist. If not, then they'll be coming soon. All right, catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Lightning out. See ya.